Hello, my beautiful patrons. This is Radhika. In this video, I'm showing you the process of how I painted Ursula in my Witchtober watercolor series. And as you can see, I am starting out with the very basic sketch, trying to get in an idea of what I want the painting to look like, placing the figure and the tentacles, and then I get started on the features of the face. So the idea is to go from big to small, do the details last, and then once I'm happy with uh, the general sketch, then I can get into the details of the mouth and the eyes and the nose, and then from there move on to adding the accessories. As you can see, I did the head and body first, and then I went on to the hands because I wanted to make sure that I had the head and body in the location and the shapes that I wanted, and then comparing the shape of the hands later on to what I have already drawn. I start making the shape of the hands with the general skeletal lines and then move on to articulations. Um, However, you'll see later on that I redid that left hand because I found it was too big for the face. But the right hand, I like the way it turned out, so I sort of make guidelines and then I fill them out, putting in the fingers, the articulations, the nails. And then once I'm happy with the drawing, I start with the watercolor painting. And I start with the background in a very light, watery blue. And this is the best way to paint with watercolors because when you start dark, if you make a mistake, it's really quite impossible to fix it. So with watercolors, once they're dry, there's not much you can do about it. And then, well, it's just best to start from very light and then go to darks. And also, as a rule, I tend to start in the background and then work my way forwards. That way, any overlapping colors will make sense if they do end up overlapping. I don't have the most steady hand in the universe. Therefore, I have to make room for errors and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. Everybody does their own thing their own way, so learning to accept that is probably the first and most important step in becoming an artist. So here I'm putting in, I think it's a mixture of about cerulean blue with some ultramarine, my absolute favorite. Ooh, and magically the hands have painted themselves. Nah, of course not. I did not manage to take a video of every single moment, every single step of the way, because oftentimes the camera and the lighting get in my way of the painting. So sometimes you'll see me skip ahead to a more completed part of the painting, and that is because I needed the space in order to focus on the painting and not so much on the videoing. But that's okay too, until I get some kind of magic drone that floats perfectly in front of the painting without blocking my view. This is the way it's gonna be. So once I've gotten down the basic flat colors in the background and on the skin, I've decided to start putting in the detail of the eyes because those colors are very bright and bold, and I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't accidentally forget about them and then paint over and sort of dull them with any other colors. So I painted those first and made sure to leave the area around inside and around them white. And then I did the same thing with the lips because I did not want to, again, dull it with any other colors. So I decided to go straight for the pink onto the white paper so that that area would be very bright and it wouldn't muddy it down. So once I'm done painting in the pinks that I want for the lips and the tongue and the back of the mouth, then I start painting in the shadows and highlights. Well, no, you don't paint in the highlights. They're already there. That's the good thing with watercolor. If you're painting on white paper, then the lightest part of your painting is just going to be left as it is. No need to put anything else on top of it unless you mess up, which I often do. So that's a good way to fix that is that if you already have like a white color, then you can just dab it on top of it. Not necessarily the same watercolor, but something that's a little more opaque. So, but that's just a contingency. Usually I leave the brightest parts white as the page. And then I'll work mostly on trying to get the shadows right. So I've sort of gotten an idea of the shadows here on the face. And then I'm working now on the neck. And then I'll continue with the body and the hair and everything else. So I went back and I got a little more of the dark color, and I'm making the outline of the nose. Now, about this painting, instead of making it very cartoony and using the original Disney Ursula from the animated movie, I decided to use as reference an image of Queen Latifah as Ursula, because I thought she just looked absolutely amazing as Ursula, and she did a great job in the Little Mermaid live show. So I decided that I wanted to portray that version of Ursula, and that way I could make it look a little more photorealistic than if I had just done it straight from cartoon Ursula, and give it a little bit of uniqueness in that regard. So one thing that I did, however, is I think I might have drawn her eyes a little bit too high for Queen Latifah. If I had made them a little bit lower, then it would look more like her. But one of the reasons why I put it a little bit higher, you'll see later on when I draw in the eyebrows, was that I wanted to keep the original crazy, evil-looking eyebrows and sort of semblance of the cartoon Ursula. So it's a little bit of a mashup between the two, and I think it sort of works out in the end. So now, after I've put down the colors on the body, I go back to the background, and I'm painting this blue over again, but this time I'm avoiding the tentacles because I want to give it a bigger sense of depth. And I've started putting in different types of blues. Like on the left you can see a little more of that ultramarine, and in between there's a little more of the cerulean blue. Eventually I want to put in a layer of turquoise blue to give it that very underwatery tropical sea type of look. But for now we're just putting in the layers lightly, and we're going to keep working putting colors on top of colors to give it more depth. So once I'm done with that, I start to put in some more details and colors onto the bra that she has there, and I'm putting in this very light grayish purple in the hair to give it also some shadows. Ursula in the film and also in the Little Mermaid Live has white hair. However, I think I'm going to put in a little bit of purple there, because in the film she has purple skin, light purple, very light purpley, like a lavender, maybe a little bit lighter than that. But here in this painting she's going to have brown skin, so to pay homage to the animated Ursula, I'm gonna have her hair be a combination of white and lavender. And as you can see, I've continued putting layers of shadows here, trying to leave the highlighted areas without much paint. And I'm going back from face to neck, and I'm going to keep doing that until I'm happy with the sense of depth or 3D illusion that is given to the painting with the layers of paint. Eventually, I'm going to go over what I've painted with black ink. I use a fine liner, and those are really useful for drawing in the very bold details that you want to outline any drawing. Not everybody uses ink with watercolors. Most people don't actually, but I actually quite like the effect, and I'm attached to lines in my drawings. So I guess I'll just keep using them until I decide that I don't want to anymore. Here I am continuing to put in layers of color, making them gradually darker and leaving the highlights as bright or as white as I can according to the paper. And so you can see the lips starting to take form and starting to look the way that I want them to. And here I put it in her, I guess you could call it eyeliner, using this India ink, also known as Chinese ink, for anyone who's curious. And so as I'm putting in the details with this fine liner, I feel that the face really comes to life with these bold details. I can put in some very fine eyelashes and outline the lips and put in those details. Oh yeah, and here you can see I did those eyebrows, those very pointy Ursula eyebrows. And then after I'm done with that, I go in with this sort of lavender gray color to put in some shadows and things like that into her hair. I think I may have overdone it a bit towards the end, but that's okay. I can just go over it with a little bit of white, and then it gets the exact color and tone and shade that I want. One fun thing about painting hair underwater is that it can go in any direction that you want. And Ursula has this very vertical do, which I like. It's very fun. I think as villains come, Ursula's quite a good one. Usually, it's quite important to have a compelling villain, and Disney tends to make them not only compelling but also quite fun. It's like, yes, the good guys are great, of course, but it's the bad guys who usually steal the show, and Ursula does a good job of that. She has quite the strong personality, and I really love the song Poor Unfortunate Souls. In fact, I think sometimes it gets stuck in my head, and I haven't even watched the movie for like, I don't even know, more than 5 years. That's for sure. I don't know. I might be in the shower or something, and suddenly it pops into my head, and I'm just there like, poor unfortunate souls, glub glub glub. So it's a whole lot of fun. I don't think Jafar is a very fun villain. Maybe Scar. I think Scar is quite good. He's very condescending towards Simba and Mufasa. If you actually listen to what he says, he can be quite a hoot. And another one that I really like is Maleficent. I think she's underappreciated, underrated as a villain, but she's really quite saucy. Mistress of evil and whatnot. Of course, I also like the new version of Maleficent, where she's just a sort of misunderstood fairy who lost her wings and was betrayed by a man. Typical tragic story. But I still hold dear to me the villainous Maleficent, just because she's kind of a badass. And she turns into a dragon, let's not forget that. So, Going back to Dear Ursula, here I've put in some different layers of more blues, and I'm putting in some sort of different types of blues. I'm going a little bit bolder with the blues now. Eventually, I'm gonna put in that turquoise green. That's gonna make it look really good. And I've put in more layers without painting the testicles. Oh dear. No, darling. Tentacles. Testicles will have to be another painting for another day and possibly another crowd. So, yes, painting the tentacles and then also not painting them to give it that watery depth. I'm also not too bothered about having streaky bits like lines of paint. I don't really care for it to be completely smooth because those streaks give it that sense again of it being water. So I guess I have flexibility right here, and I'm gonna use it to my greatest advantage. I am not a master watercolor painter, as I'm sure most people can tell. It's actually, this was my first time, not this particular painting, but this was like my first month ever attempting to paint anything with watercolors that would be worthwhile. I've sort of messed around with it before, but it's quite intimidating because, like I said, I tend to make a lot of mistakes. But I find that I really like it. I like the effect, and I'm gonna continue playing around with it and seeing what I can do. I think it's important as a student of art and a student of life to not limit myself to just one media. I can use different ones and enjoy doing art as in any way that I can. Okay, so now we're almost done, but unfortunately I don't have footage of the rest of it. So here is the final image, and you can see I really got in there and put in those details and the bubbles and everything. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to my patrons for making this possible. I love you guys. Bye.